Man, this is troubling news. Chris Tanev's out.
Maple Leafs didn't just lose a defenseman, it lost certainty. The latest injury update has pushed the Maple Leafs into an uncomfortable waiting game, one involving doctors, timelines, and major roster decisions. The language has changed, the tone has shifted, and what happens next may not be announced all at once. The Toronto Maple Leafs received another difficult update surrounding defenseman Chris Tanev after his latest injury was reevaluated by team officials and league insiders. Tanev, who suffered a groin injury during a recent game, is now expected to miss significant time. Multiple reports indicate that his regular season availability is in serious doubt, with some sources stating he may not return before the playoffs. Head coach Craig Berube addressed the situation publicly after the injury. He confirmed the severity of the absence without offering a specific timeline. Chris Tanev is going to miss some time, significant time, Berube said. They're looking at things going forward here, so I'm not going to speculate on what they're going to exactly do, but he's going to be out a while. Those comments mark the first shift in tone from short-term concern to long-term uncertainty. Further reporting added weight to that concern. According to NHL insiders, Tanev is scheduled to meet with a surgeon to evaluate his groin injury. That meeting is expected to determine whether surgery is required. If surgery is recommended, his return timeline would extend well beyond the remainder of the regular season, potentially into late April or May. At that point, the focus would shift from recovery to availability. This development follows an already interrupted season for Tanev. He has appeared in only 11 games so far and recorded 2 assists. Earlier in the year, he missed time with an upper body injury, limiting his ability to maintain consistent ice time. The current groin injury is separate from those earlier issues, but it adds to a growing list of health setbacks during his first season with the Maple Leafs. Tanev signed a 6-year contract worth $27 million, carrying a $4.5 million annual cap hit. With his status now uncertain, the Maple Leafs may need to consider long-term injured reserve options if medical evaluations confirm he will not return during the regular season. That designation would provide cap relief, but it would also confirm that the team will move forward without one of its veteran defensemen for an extended period. Tanev was brought in to stabilize the blue line and handle difficult defensive assignments. His role included penalty kill minutes, defensive zone starts, and matchups against top opposing forward. Since his injury, Toronto has rotated replacement defensemen into those roles. Hockey coverage outlets have noted that the drop-off has been measurable, with defensive pairings showing less consistency and structure during games without him. The timing of this injury has added pressure to management decisions. With the trade deadline approaching, Toronto now faces limited flexibility. If Tanev is officially ruled out for the regular season, placing him on long-term injured reserve would allow the team to exceed the salary cap by the value of his contract. However, that move would only come after medical confirmation. Until then, roster adjustments remain restricted. This injury situation also overlaps with other health concerns on the roster. Sportsnet reported that multiple Maple Leafs players are dealing with injuries, including Dakota Joshua, who is expected to miss significant time, and other core players listed as day-to-day earlier in the season. The accumulation of injuries has narrowed lineup options and increased the workload on healthy defensemen. Several reports have pointed out that Tanev's absence is not unexpected given the physical nature of his play, but the duration remains the critical factor. According to Daily Faceoff, the upcoming surgical consultation will determine whether rehabilitation alone is possible or whether an operation is required. That decision will set the direction for the remainder of his season. Pro Hockey Rumors also noted that Tanev had only recently returned to action before suffering this latest setback, appearing in just 3 games before being sidelined again. That sequence has raised concerns about recovery durability and long-term readiness, especially as the regular season progresses. As of now, the Maple Leafs have not issued a definitive ruling on Tanev's season status. What is confirmed is that he will miss extended time, and that the team is already adjusting its plans accordingly. With medical evaluations pending and roster implications growing, the situation remains active, unresolved, and closely monitored across the league.
with Marty Bureau. Marty, here's an observation I've made. Nothing seems to come easy for this Maple Leafs team.
The Toronto Maple Leafs were not dealing with one bad night or one missing player. The problems were deeper. Defensive numbers told the story. Injuries added weight. Then the general manager broke his silence. He did not shift blame. He did not promise quick fixes. What he admitted placed the entire season under a harsher light.
We're not where we want to be or where we envision to be. Obviously, we've underperformed to this point, and I take full responsibility. I'm in charge of the hockey department. I've put the people in place on the ice, off the ice, so the responsibility lies with myself, and we start today and every day trying to get ourselves back up and going and improve where we are.
The focus moved sharply to Brad Treliving after the Toronto Maple Leafs continued to struggle through the early portion of the season. During a media availability, the general manager addressed the team's performance directly. He stated, "We've underperformed to this point." That statement placed responsibility at the top of the organization, not on individual players or coaching staff, and it marked one of the clearest acknowledgments from the front office this season. Treliving expanded on that position by stating, "I'm in charge of the hockey department. I've put the people in place on the ice, off the ice, so the responsibility lies with myself." The comment removed ambiguity about where accountability rests. At the time of those remarks, the Maple Leafs held an 8-9-2 record. They ranked second last in the Eastern Conference. The team had also allowed the second most goals per game in the league.
Brett Treliving, the general manager, had his media availability at about the quarter mark of the season, and things are not going well in Toronto right now when you look at the hockey club. And Noodles, one of the quotes that really stood out, there was a lot of great quotes that I want to talk about with you about Brad Treliving. One of them was, "There's too much vanilla with our hockey team right now." And when I think of Brad Treliving talking about we need a new DNA, and right now he's saying there's too much vanilla, I mean, this is a pretty significant message to the players.
Attention then shifted to the team's identity. Treliving described the Maple Leafs on-ice product as too much vanilla. The description pointed to inconsistency and a lack of complete performances rather than isolated mistakes. He also stated that the issues were not limited to specific players. Put anybody in the uniform and playing the way we're playing, we're probably going to have the same result. The general manager also addressed speculation around immediate roster changes. Treliving stated, "You're not trading your way out of problems." That remark signaled resistance to quick external fixes. Instead, he emphasized that improvement must come from within the existing group. At the same time, he publicly reaffirmed his support for head coach Craig Berube, stating, "Craig didn't become a bad coach overnight," and adding that he had all the faith in the world in him. These statements surfaced as injuries continued to impact the roster. Veteran defenseman Chris Tanev suffered a groin injury described in reports as potentially long-term. Other players dealt with lower body issues, further limiting lineup stability. With performance concerns already present, the injury situation increased attention on roster depth and long-term planning, and that pressure remained fixed on the general manager as the situation continued to develop. The situation intensified as external pressure met internal limitations. Reports published in early January indicated that roster planning had become more complicated due to injuries, particularly on defense. According to coverage summarized by Hockey Patrol, the Maple Leafs were forced to reassess trade deadline planning because of player availability and health concerns. Chris Tanev's groin injury was identified as a key factor, with the absence expected to last a significant period, further reducing defensive depth. At the same time, the general manager maintained his stance against reactive decision-making. His statement, "You're not trading your way out of problems," continued to shape public interpretation of the organization's direction. The message was clear: immediate transactions would not replace internal corrections. This position stood even as external observers linked injuries and defensive struggles back to roster construction choices made before the season began. The pressure surrounding these comments increased because of timing. The Maple Leafs were not dealing with isolated losses. They were managing sustained inconsistency. According to the Hockey News, Treliving acknowledged the lack of complete games and noted that the team struggled to maintain structure over full 60-minute performances. These remarks aligned with his earlier description of the team's play as lacking attacking edge and consistency. Despite the criticism, Treliving continued to place emphasis on unity within the organization. His support for head coach Craig Berube remained firm. Treliving rejected any suggestion that coaching instability was the source of the problem.
Yeah, good resilience tonight and character coming back, coming back the whole game, But we stuck with it, and I thought guys had good attitude and kept competing and doing good things, and ended up scoring some goals, which we needed.
The Maple Leafs fell behind again and again, yet refused to fade. When the final horn sounded, the scoreboard told one story. The coach told another. Craig Berube stood firm after the win, choosing his words carefully, sending a message that landed hard and changed the conversation heading forward. The Toronto Maple Leafs delivered one of their most turbulent wins of the season with a 6-5 comeback victory against the Winnipeg Jets. The game unfolded with constant momentum swings. Each time, the team responded with a goal. The result marked one of the highest scoring games of the season for the club. Auston Matthews led the charge. The Maple Leafs captain recorded a hat trick and added an assist. His third goal came late in the third period and stood as the game winner. According to the official game recap, Matthews finished the night with 4 points, directly factoring into more than half of Toronto's goals. His performance came after returning to the lineup following a brief injury absence. The game also featured a major goaltending change. Joseph Woll started the game for Toronto, but was pulled after allowing 4 goals. Dennis Hildeby entered in relief and stopped 22 of 23 shots. That change stabilized the game and allowed Toronto to stay within reach as the offense continued to press. Winnipeg contributed heavily to the chaos. Mark Scheifele scored twice and added an assist. Gabriel Velarde and Alexei Afalo also found the net. The Jets held leads at several points and entered the third period still within striking distance. However, Toronto's late push proved decisive. After the game, head coach Craig Berube addressed the media. His tone was firm. He focused on effort, response, and execution rather than mistakes. Good resilience and character coming back tonight, Berube said during his post-game availability. He later added, "I like the guy's attitude. Everyone kept going." Berube referenced how the team stayed engaged despite allowing goals. His comments centered on response rather than breakdown. He did not single out individual errors. Instead, he emphasized collective pushback after each deficit. Toronto improved its recent stretch with the victory, while Winnipeg's losing streak extended. The game ended with celebration on the ice, but the focus quickly shifted to the coach's message, which framed the night as something more than just a comeback win. The message from Craig Berube did not stop at resilience. His remarks also reflected how the Maple Leafs are choosing to play during this stretch of the season. Toronto has leaned into offense, even when games become unstable. Against Winnipeg, that approach was visible from the opening period through the final minutes of regulation. Berube acknowledged the reality of the game's structure. Goals were allowed. Momentum shifted, yet the bench response remained consistent. Players continued to attack. The coach did not frame the win around clean execution. Instead, he described persistence through repeated setbacks. His comments aligned with the numbers on the scoreboard rather than any single moment. Dennis Hildeby's role became more pronounced as the game progressed. After replacing Woll, he faced consistent pressure but allowed only 1 goal. His save percentage for the night finished above .950. The stabilization in net coincided with Toronto's ability to push forward without conceding another lead. Berube's comments did not reference external criticism directly. He spoke through the lens of performance. His emphasis remained on how the team reacted after being tested repeatedly. The coach's language centered on attitude, pushback, and staying engaged. These were observable elements reflected in the flow of the game. The win also came during a period of increased scrutiny around Toronto's consistency. High-scoring games have defined recent results. Against Winnipeg, that pattern continued. The Maple Leafs scored 6 goals for the second time in a week. Over their last 5 games, their goal total reached 25, confirming the offensive surge. Winnipeg's situation added context. The Jets entered the game on a losing streak that extended further with this result. Despite strong individual performances, they were unable to hold multiple leads. Toronto capitalized on each opening created. As the media session concluded, Berub's remarks framed the night around response rather than control. The scoreboard confirmed the comeback. The quotes confirmed the stance. The result stood, but the message carried beyond the final horn.
Circle back on Rasmus Andersson as the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know the Leafs tried to trade for Andersson last year at the deadline, and why I mentioned Toronto is that my understanding is that the Leafs would be one of those teams that perhaps Andersson would consider extending with if, in fact, a trade would work out between those two teams.
Yeah, and look, the Toronto Maple Leafs right now are in a bit of a predicament. Of course, they would have interest and continued interest in Rasmus Andersson.
Toronto Maple Leafs are quietly active again, and the focus has narrowed. Injuries have changed priorities. Familiar names are back on internal lists. Calgary's situation is being watched closely. No announcement has been made, but multiple teams are circling, and Toronto's involvement has added new pressure to a market that is already tightening fast. Rasmus Andersson has remained one of the most discussed defensemen in NHL trade conversations since last summer. The Calgary Flames blue liner is entering the final year of his contract and has not committed to an extension. That contract status has placed him under constant evaluation as Calgary continues to assess its direction this season. Multiple league reports have stated that if the Flames remain outside the playoff picture, moving Andersson becomes a realistic option rather than risking his departure without return. Interest in Andersson has not been limited to one team. Despite that attention, no transaction has progressed to an advanced stage. Insiders have consistently described discussions as exploratory rather than final. The absence of traction has not eliminated interest. Instead, it has shifted activity behind the scenes. Toronto's involvement has drawn particular focus. According to David Pagnotta, speaking on the Hello Hockey podcast on December 27th, the Maple Leafs are among the teams that have kicked the tires on Andersson. Pagnotta stated, "I still think he's getting moved. We know the usual Dallas and Vegas suspects. We know Toronto's kicked the tires. I could see LA getting back into that discussion." The comment reinforced the idea that Toronto's attention has not faded, even without immediate progress. Toronto's renewed interest aligns with internal circumstances. The Maple Leafs have faced continued pressure on their blue line due to injuries. Chris Tanev was recently ruled out for a significant period with a groin injury. His absence has reduced defensive stability and increased the workload on remaining defenders. Reuters reported that Tanev missed Toronto's most recent game with no clear timeline provided for his return. That development has intensified scrutiny on Toronto's defensive depth. Andersson's profile fits the category Toronto has been monitoring. This season, he has recorded 25 points in 39 games, including 7 goals and 18 assists. He averages over 24 minutes of ice time per game and has contributed 71 blocked shots and 21 hits. Over his NHL career, Andersson has accumulated 256 points in 575 games. His usage reflects consistent deployment against top competition, a factor teams weigh heavily when evaluating potential acquisitions. Market conditions around Rasmus Andersson have remained controlled rather than aggressive. Reports have indicated that Calgary has not rushed the process and has continued to gather information across the league. The Flames have acknowledged interest, but have not signaled urgency. That posture has kept discussions measured and prevented rapid escalation despite ongoing speculation. Several insiders have pointed to timing as a key factor. Toronto previously explored Andersson at last year's trade deadline, but a deal did not materialize. Pierre LeBrun later reported that the Maple Leafs have since circled back on Andersson as the pool of available top 4 defensemen has narrowed. Following the movement of other high-end defensemen across the league, teams seeking similar profiles have limited alternatives. That contraction has raised Andersson's visibility. Calgary's position remains tied to its broader competitive outlook. The Flames have spent much of the season outside the playoff picture. As that trend continues, league observers have increasingly framed Andersson as one of the most valuable assets Calgary could move. His age, production, and role elevate his market standing compared to short-term depth options. Calgary has not publicly confirmed trade plans, but multiple reports have noted that front office evaluation is ongoing. Toronto's patience has also also been documented. Drager explained that Toronto was monitoring the market while waiting for additional sellers to emerge. With limited supply, teams have shown caution rather than overcommit early. Injury developments have kept the situation fluid. Chris Tanev's absence has placed increased responsibility on Toronto's remaining defensemen. That reality has not been framed as a trigger for immediate action, but it has reinforced the rationale behind continued engagement. Toronto's front office has acknowledged the need for improvement and has maintained communication lines rather than stepping away. At this stage, no formal agreement exists. No finalized framework has been reported. What has been confirmed is sustained interest, repeated evaluation, and continued dialogue. As league insiders have emphasized, the absence of movement does not reflect inactivity. It reflects positioning, timing, and leverage still being tested.
Well, he's coming on a trip, so that's a good sign, but lower body right now. We'll see how he is tomorrow.
The change came without warning. It happened just before puck drop. One of Toronto's top scorers was suddenly not on the ice. The Maple Leafs had already prepared their lines. Then everything shifted. William Nylander was scratched late with a lower body injury. Within